So my name is Linda Strange, and here we are back by popular demand with my mentee, Georbina II, for a second conversation. This one about something a little bit different about her experience when she went to college as a woman of color at a college where the majority of people were white, which for Georbina was a new experience. Most of the schools she had been to, she had been in the majority.
Yes.
And suddenly the tables were turned. So we're gonna switch questions. We have questions for each other, and I'm gonna ask the first one. And she went to Connecticut College, I should say. And one of the things that I really liked about Connecticut College when we looked at it was they did a freshman orientation before the regular freshman orientation. And that orientation was for students of color and or students who were the first in their family to go to college, which in many cases was the same thing. And I remember you went to that and you really loved that orientation. It was like 3 days, I think, before anybody else showed up. And super supported, you were super positive about everything. And I was so pleased about that. And I remember we were talking the night before the rest of the freshmen arrived. And I said as a joke, okay, you know the white people are coming tomorrow, right? And we both had a good laugh over it. And she said, yeah, I know. Okay, all right. So my question is, do you remember how it felt that day to see all those cars pull up and all those folks get out of the cars with their families, white families mostly, not completely, because your experience prior to that had been very different.
Yes. I remember walking, I was coming from the dining hall going into my dorm, and I see all the cars pull up, I see the families coming out. And I know we had talked about this before, but I think in that moment I was like, OMG. And I really appreciated the program that I did a few days before, just to experience the campus with people who look like myself. But then I think it was like an immediate shock right after, because one, like you said, attending schools in Bridgeport, we were all predominantly of color, and that wasn't something I experienced or was exposed to. So when it did happen, I remember feeling shocked and feeling overwhelmed. And then I went in my room, in my dorm room, and then I just stayed there. And then when we did the orientation, I remember feeling very overwhelmed and a little bit nervous because I didn't know what would happen next and how that would be.
Yeah. I can imagine. Because I remember the next night we talked and I'm like, did they come? And you were like, from every direction.
From every direction. Every direction.
Oh, okay. So I think you have a question for me. We're going to switch off here.
Okay. So my mother called you panicking after she dropped me off at Connecticut College. I was her first child going to college, and so she was nervous, sad, and overwhelmed. She told me you said you were not going to forget about me after she, called you. How did you feel knowing that I was starting this new, scary, but also exciting journey in college?
So I remember your mother calling me, and in those days it was really unusual for her to call me. So she, and she couldn't even finish her sentence. She would start and she'd be like, I can't, and I knew what it was. And I said, look, don't worry about it. This is just the beginning. Getting Georbina into college was one hurdle, but having her stay in college is the next thing. And I'm not done, I'm gonna stick with her, absolutely. And I also thought, Connecticut College, I was glad they had an orientation for the parents, but they clearly have to make some changes if the parents go home so panicked that they don't know. Because I'm sure your mother wasn't the only person that had that reaction.
Right.
So I don't know what was said or whatever, but she was just like, I can't do this, And I was like, don't worry, we're gonna keep her there. We're gonna keep her there.
And I definitely think you affirmed her and reassured her, because she was freaking out. And I can see how hard that was for her. And she went through the orientation. I think there was a part where someone said that was running the program that we won't call you. They're adults, unless it's a medical issue. There's no reason for us to call you. We have to treat them like adults. And I think for her, she was like, what do you mean you're not going to call me if something happens? I think it was definitely a shock for her.
Yeah, definitely. And also for your mom, like your journey with learning English, we've also seen your mom make that same journey at the same time. And I'm thinking that a lot of the language that they used might have also been very overwhelming.
Oh,
in that
probably.
So,
Yeah.
All right, so now it's my turn again. So we're going to stick with the orientation experience. I remember that when you, after that really great, super positive orientation, all the rest of the people came and you had the main freshman orientation. And I remember you were put in a small group, or you told me you were put in a small group with some other freshmen. And in the course of the conversation, one of the boys said, with you there in front of you, that he thought the minority kids got way too much help and it wasn't fair. And we had actually talked about this. Like I had said, there are going to be people who say dumb stuff like this. And I remember I asked you, did you get angry? And you were like, no, I didn't get angry. I explained to him some of the challenges that I'd had to face and other kids had to face, all of which appeared to be news to him, like, duh, okay. And I wonder, how did that feel? I mean, I know that can't be the only time that happened in your time there. How was it to be the one that had to be calm and adult when you were probably pretty angry and wounded? How did that feel?
I think the first time I experienced microaggressions, I don't think I knew the term for it. I think that experience that you're talking about, I was very calm, and I think because it was the first time I engaged in a conversation like that, I explained myself, I advocated for myself. I wasn't angry, I think I was very calm about it. But then when it continued to happen multiple times, I think eventually by sophomore, junior year, especially junior year, I was angry of having to over explain myself, of having to deal with a lot of microaggressions, of feeling like I didn't belong, and I wasn't the only one that was experiencing this. My peers who were also Black, they were also experiencing the same things. And it was exhausting to be a student, but to also be a Black student. And having to just sit in the classrooms, and sometimes even, and it wasn't just the students, there were some professors that would, even when we were on the conversation of race, that would be like, so Georbina, like, you know,
and you get to go first.
And at the same time, I think for me, I was also learning about racism I think I knew systematic racism, but I don't think I had experienced it on a one-to-one, because in Bridgeport, everyone looked like me. And so I think I was trying to make sense of my world and also trying to educate these students while also educating myself at the same time. And I struggled. And there was a point where, yes, I was very, very angry and I was frustrated. And there were times where I would be able to have those conversations, and there would be times where I just felt extremely, extremely overwhelmed. But I think after I had joined Students Organized Against Racism, and I found the organization, but also found my people, and I started being educated around like race and all the isms, I'm like, okay, this is a thing. And I remember feeling so small, and I'm like, I can't fight oppression. How am I going to deal with it without feeling burnt out? And why am I responsible to do the education? It shouldn't be that way. I had a lot of questions. I had a lot of questions and a lot of anger eventually.
Interesting.
Yeah.
I don't blame you. You're almost amazed that people still say some of the things that they still say in this day and age. You're like, really? You know, but stuff still comes out of people's mouths that you thought we were past or should be past.
And I think those experiencing happening, and also I was also taking classes for the first time about oppression, so I was like learning all these things and also experiencing them. And I think that was also very difficult. It was great that I was gaining this knowledge, but also at the same time I was also experiencing it, and I was overwhelmed. It was a lot. It was a lot.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
Okay. Did you believe that I could handle the struggles that come with being a first-generation college student, especially given how my high school did not prepare me to the extent that maybe a better high school would?
Okay, so I never doubted, emotionally, I never doubted that you could handle it. I knew you were tough and you would get through it. But I also knew it was going to be tough. And I have to admit, that first semester I started to be a little worried when some of those phone calls, just the tone in your voice, you were so tired and so exhausted. And I remember just talking to you about culture shock. Like, this is like moving to another country, all right? And you only have so much energy in a given day, and then that's it, you know? You have to recoup, and the next day do it again. So I never doubted that you would make it, but I knew it was going to be tough. What I didn't understand, and I was kicking myself about, was the math.
Yeah.
Because I knew you'd gotten into the IB program at your high school at Harding, and I never really questioned you about it after that. Like, I assumed that, okay, it's the International Baccalaureate program, so she's getting what she needs. But I should have realized that was happening in the context of an inner city high school that had all the challenges that an inner city high school has as far as staffing and other kids. And I never did. So you arrived at Connecticut College with not enough math to pass a chemistry course. That was the bottom line. All right, taking biology and chemistry at the same time in the first semester. But anyway, but you really just didn't have the math. And I blamed myself for that, because if I had intervened years earlier, we could have handled that somehow by getting tutors or whatever. But I never asked, because I just assumed the program was taken care of.
And I think I never brought that up to you because I thought that was normal. Given the circumstances at my high school, we were short-staffed, we were underfunded, and there were many times where, especially for my math classes, I think freshman year I had Algebra 1, I had a full year, and then after that we just had substitutes back to back to back, and we would play card games, and that wasn't my responsibility. Like, we should have had a full-time teacher, absolutely. You know, and I think I was also a kid. I didn't think much about it. I was like, it's a free period. Let me do homework. Let me play, you know? And I didn't think it would impact me the way it ended up doing. So that was that, and it sucks. And I remember having a conversation with one of my mentors from Upward Bound. She also went in college, pre-med, and she also went through the same struggle that I did, because different schools, still in Bridgeport, she didn't have the basic fundamental skills to be able to go through the program. And that's frustrating, because there's a lot of kids who wanted to go into pre-med but couldn't do it because they didn't have the right resources that they should have had to begin with.
Sure.
And I thought that was normal. I thought, well, this is just what happens at my high school, and that wasn't.
And I didn't ask. I just assumed it was working. So I remember that, and I remember feeling very guilty about that, because learning math, by the time you got to Connecticut College, you had so many other things going on. Then, like, learning Algebra 2 at the same time was just not happening right then. And so you changed your path. I
did change my path, and it worked out.
It did.
It worked out for me. But that doesn't also happen for everyone else, especially the kids who, you know, went through the similar experience with me and then really did want to go pre-med.
Sure. They didn't find another way. No. So I have another question I remember we had another exchange when you were at Connecticut College about selective colleges, which Connecticut College qualifies as a selective college. And I commented that I had been looking at statistics, and like literally every single selective college in the US, 7% minority. Maybe 6, maybe 8, but never out of that range, never less and never more. And I said that to you, and your response at the time struck me as, it was a little bit depressing and sad, even though I'm not sure you meant it to be depressing and sad. Maybe you were just being matter of fact, but you said, yeah, they don't want to bring any more of us in because we'll bring down their scores. And my question is, do you remember saying that? And can you comment on what you meant and how that made you feel?
I definitely remember saying that, and I think I commented that based on, for example, we can use myself. First semester I failed chem and bio, because I wasn't prepared for those courses. Academic wise, that does bring down the school, right? So a lot of I don't want to say a lot, but some of the inner city students that do go into these types of colleges, we're not prepared to the same level as the students that are coming in from better schools, from private schools. So there are times where we're struggling a little bit more. Our grades may not be straight A's, or maybe we had a great school, but then we're dealing with the social, emotional aspects of that. And so I think schools use that percentage because one, they need those grades, but two, a lot of my peers were coming in, we have a bigger financial aid package, right? And I understand the school cannot do that for everyone. And so the numbers have to be small from a strategic point of view, from a financial point of view. And it's sad, but you're right. Like most of the liberal arts school have that, what was it, like 6%?
6-7%.
6-7%.
Pretty steady for everyone.
Because at the end of the day, it is a business and they have to run it. But they also have to meet the quota of making sure that they're not a racist school and that they have a certain amount of students of color.
Absolutely.
And it's all politics at the end of the day, which sucks.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Okay. So we visited a lot of different colleges. How did you feel about taking that responsibility of exposing me to all these different colleges? Was it rewarding or was it challenging?
I really enjoyed taking you around to schools. Challenging in the sense that, it required some organization as far as, making phone calls and making appointments. But no, I thought it was really great. It was nice for me to see you having the experience of going to different schools and taking tours. And I found like the schools, they usually pick really nice kids to give the tours, and they're like really positive and informative, and we found that at every school, I think. So no, it was great. I remember taking the tour with you at Cornell, which was the last one we visited in New York together, and there were a lot of like very preppy parents and kids they looked pretty stressed, right? They were all taking the same tour with us. And you had on like a flowered dress, and you were and I remember one father was looking at you and I thought, yeah, buddy, we're here too, all right? But we really enjoyed that, and we had a couple of days on the road and just going out to restaurants together as well. I remember you in when we went to see Colgate and we stayed at the inn there. You forgot to use your jacuzzi because you didn't realize you had one.
I think about that often.
And when we sat down to eat, we went through the menu, and I remember you noted down filet mignon and creme brulee for later, so you could remember that. But no, I just remember that as a really positive experience, giving you an experience. It would have been difficult for your mom to give you, but then later your mom did start taking you to schools, because she sort of saw how it worked, and we went to some more in Connecticut, but she also took you to schools, so that was great.
And I think you taking me first really helped me to see, okay, this is what it entails, this is what we need to do, which then my mom and we were able to game plan and do like the Connecticut colleges schools, or the schools that were nearby. But I don't know if I would have been able to do that by myself or figured that out if I hadn't done that already with you. I felt, okay, like I did this with Miss Strange already.
You show up,
make it a point, like I knew this, the in and out.
I think that's the case for so many things about going to college. Like you just don't know how it's done. And as soon as you see how it's done, like the mystery of it goes away.
Right.
You're like, oh, so that's what you do. Okay, we can do that. Nothing's stopping us. But if you've never had that experience before, you've never had it modeled for you, why would you know?
Exactly.
Why would you know? And you would just think that's something out of my reach. I can't do that. So no, I liked that. I enjoyed that.
I did too.
So my last question for you is your senior project that you did. She made a documentary about exactly what we're talking about today, the experiences of students of color at predominantly white institutions. And you interviewed different students who you knew, who all basically, in different ways, said the same thing, how difficult and painful it was to be that token student who other people put their ideas on you and pressure on you. And of course, I understood going in it was going to be challenging for you. I totally got that. But it made me start thinking, you know what, like, did it have to be like that, because I remembered how positive you were after your initial orientation, And I thought, well, what if we had looked at schools like Howard and Spelman, and then you wouldn't have been the minority at a school where everyone else was a different color. Would your experience have been, the answer I think is yes, would your experience have been more positive? And it really made me face my own prejudices that I had not done that. Now, of course, in the end, you decided you want to go to school in Connecticut, and there are not a lot of historically black colleges in Connecticut.
Yeah.
But you might not have made that decision if we had toured Howard and Spelman and other schools. So that's something I have to live with. But my question is, what do you think about it? Do you think your experience, if you had gone to a historically black school, would have been more positive and better prepared you for what you wanted to do?
So even though we didn't add the predominantly black schools, with Upper Bound, I did end up visiting Howard.
Okay, well,
And
I'm happy
so
to hear
yes, so I want you to know that. And I liked it, but it just didn't feel like a good fit. And I think, like I said, this was my first time where I was starting to also realize, being Cape Verdean and associating myself with my African culture, and then there were African Americans, and I think there was almost like a divide, like where do I fit in? And so I think that's what I struggle with. Do I also belong in Howard?
Okay.
And so that was that piece for me. But I think subconsciously that's what I was thinking of, and then I just didn't look into it. And I also didn't want to go far away, so I was stuck with being, and with the limited options of the schools in Connecticut. Yes, I think my experience, and I think about this sometimes, where I'm like, how would my experience in college been if I had gone to Spelman or Howard or a school like that? And yes, I think I wouldn't have faced the microaggressions and all of the issues that I faced at Connecticut College. And I think I would have definitely have created a great community, and it would have felt like home, and I wouldn't question if I belonged or not, or maybe I would have, in terms of my African identity and being African American, like what black really means.
Right.
So I don't know that, but I don't regret my experiences at Connecticut College at all, because once I left Connecticut College, I went to Columbia, and I was really prepared for an Ivy League school that was still very white. And our social work program was the oldest social work program, but we were just my year starting to do a lot of the social justice work. So I had already gone through that. So I feel like all props to, the black schools, but also I feel like that would have shielded me from a lot of things that I was exposed to and had to learn from Connecticut College. And it was absolutely difficult. But I think, Con did the best they could with the Alana program, with the Unity House, with the programs to support the black students. But then I think the biggest piece that was missing was also the mental health aspect, which we only had one black psychologist. And there was just too many of us for her, and everyone wanted her, because we're tired of dealing with white people. We want to see someone who knows our experiences, who can help us professionally, right? So I think that was the biggest missing piece that I learned, that I was like, if they added that, because we're going to face those issues, whether it's at Connecticut College or outside of Connecticut College. But I think if we were supported to really learn how to navigate those in a way that's a little bit healthier, I think would have helped me and helped some of the other students as well.
Okay. All right. Do you have another question
I
for
do,
me? I think
yeah.
so, yeah.
So you exposed me to a lifestyle that my parents couldn't afford, like the overnight trip upstate to visit some colleges that we talked about briefly. A lot of the things that you did for me, my parents would not have been able to financially do. I never experienced this as you being the help, but more of you intentionally wanting the best for me because you cared and loved me. How did we create a positive cross-race mentoring relationship?
How did we do
How
that?
did we do that?
I think the most honest answer is it wasn't a planned thing.
Yes.
We just really liked each other.
Yes.
Okay, and that's why it works,
Yeah.
because we still really like each other. But of course, as a teacher in an inner city school, you want to help students get out, whatever that means, and you see kids go through the school year after year, and you can see like all the difficulties and all the challenges and all the things that are going to prevent them from realizing their dreams. And of course, at one point, you want to help someone do that. But that makes it sound like I really planned, like I was scouring the halls looking for someone to be my, and that's not how it happened. It happened in a very organic way. I just wanted to, yeah, let's go to New York. You know, you want to be a model? Let's go and look at some famous.
Let's go to the Chanel store.
Chanel exhibit.
Yes.
Let's go to the Chanel exhibit. She was a really famous designer, you know, and so it's sort of little by little, it moved on from that. And I remember bumping into your mother. I think you had gone on to middle school at this point, but your brother was still at Walsh. And I said, you know, I really want to talk to Georbina about college. And then she's like, whatever you want, Mrs. Strange. but I think even and I think I wouldn't blame your parents if they had been, I don't know if I want to use the word suspicious, but like, you know, what does this woman want? Why is she doing this? But I think as the years passed and I didn't go away and I continued to help you, they realized that I was for real. All right. I wasn't being a jerk, and it wasn't like you were some sort of play toy, that it was a genuine relationship. And everyone just, we went on from there. But of course, every time you have a success, you know, I feel like my own daughter had a success. So it's been great.
It has been great.
And I never felt like that for anyone else in all the time. I've looked at some kids and thought, no, because I understand there has to be there has to be a really strong bond.
There was a strong bond, and we connected, both of us. And I think I was very open to our mentoring relationship, but also my mom too. And I think that's why it worked too. And you were invested in my education and my emotional well-being, and my mom, being new to this country, you know, dealing with what she was dealing with, she didn't mind the extra support. She knew that, you know, you wanted the best for me and you were helping me in school. What parent wouldn't want that?
I think some parents might have been suspicious, but I mean, your family already knew me. I taught your cousins already, so I was like a known quantity. I wasn't some new strange person, but no, absolutely. No regrets.
No regrets. And we've built a really great bond and a really great relationship.
And it still exists.
And it still exists years
things
after.
change. I don't know how you got to be 28 years old, but you are. So yeah. So I think we're going to end it there for today. I already have plans for another conversation, so you can stay tuned to my YouTube channel to see any of the conversations with Georbina videos. I think the next one's going to be about your retention, because I just recently had another short story accepted for publication regarding what happened with that. And I think that might be an interesting thing to explore.
Let's do it.
How you felt about it. So yeah, so happy Thanksgiving,
Happy
everyone.
Thanksgiving. Thank you for having me.
Thanks for coming.